So this is just water in this first dipper. And I've also got some water in a jam jar just off of camera. And I'll use this for cleaning out my brushes, and then I can dip my brush into the end of this dipper just if I want to add a little bit more flow to the paint. So the ground colour that I'm going to go for this painting is based on the lightest area in the painting. So what we perceive here as white on these two areas. And when we put the value strip up against them, it's very interesting because when you have a look at what would be white, so the value 1, you can see how dark it actually is. And you've got to keep on going to about a value 5 on this scale to match the value of this lighter area here. You can see areas of the colour in the cloud up here. Okay, so let's just mix that first. This is a burnt umber and some ultramarine blue. And titanium white. So by using the brown and the blue, I can use those together to create a grey value, and then I can lighten that with the white. So to start with, I'm just going to be looking for that mid-tone, that 5 value. So if I start off with some of the white, and then add a tiny bit of the blue, and what I can do on this value strip, because it's been laminated, I can test swatches onto it and just check how my value is looking. So here you can see how it's still got to go a bit darker. So I could just add a bit more blue to it, which will darken it off. But then I just want to check to see how blue that is in comparison to our reference image. It's feeling quite strong. You can see it's not looking too bad, but it's just too blue. It's just not muted enough. So then I can add a bit of the burnt umber into that, and that will darken it and take some of that blue away. So burnt umber is within the orange family of colours, and orange and blue are opposite on the colour wheel. So when you mix them together, they'll cancel each other out. So you can start to see how that's muted down that blue. If we have a look on the value, it's not looking bad. It could even go a little bit lighter. Let's have a look on our reference. Okay, that's actually looking quite good for our reference. Maybe a little bit more of the burnt umber just to dilute it down, take that intensity down of the blue just a little bit more, and a bit of white to balance the value. Okay, that's looking really nice. But it's amazing when you're looking at it next to all this white, you can't really believe that that white is going to be this white on here. So this is one of the key things with painting. It's all about the colours around it, that context that makes colours read in a certain way. That's great. So usually when I'm applying a colour ground, I'd apply it onto a table, but I'm just going to show you it here because it's set up at the easel. So here I've got a Decorators brush. This is a 2-inch Decorators brush. I'm just going to dip the bristles into some water, and what that does is helps to bring all the bristles together, and then also it will dilute the paint a bit when I mix it into it. Because I don't want this layer to be really thick, I just kind of want it to stain the surface. Let's have a look. See how it's kind of there, but it is pulling as I make a brush stroke with it. It's getting all that texture from the canvas. So I want a little bit more flow than that. So just again, dip it into the water, work it into the bristles. That's got a bit better flow. Even a bit more water. And then just finish off going in one direction and just overlapping your strokes. Okay, and we can just leave that to dry. So for drawing out the reference, I'm using a mechanical pencil. This is by Uniball called a Kuru Toga. And I really like this pencil because when you click it to extend the lead kind of turns around, so it rotates round, hence the name Roulette. And what this just can help to do is give you a nice fine edge when you're working with the pencil. You can of course also use a normal pencil like a 2B or a 3B to draw this out, but I find this is just nice. It gives a nice fine line. So the first thing I'm just establishing are just the main blocks of the shapes. So just trying to see all of the boats rather than just being boats, just see how the mass of their shapes are all working together. Just trying to judge where the moon is going to be. So once I've got the basics drawn out with the pencil, it's quite hard to see the pencil against the ground colour that we're working on. So I'm just going to use an acrylic marker just so it's a bit easier for you to see the actual drawing and the shapes that we're working to. So this is a mixed media marker from Decorators, and what's great about it is that you can just undo the marker and just pour in any particular ink or acrylic that you want to use. So this has got a high flow acrylic in it. This is from Golden Paints in a sepia colour. I don't mind the pencil on the far horizon, because when I'm painting I don't really want that hard line of the pen coming through. On this area it'll be absolutely fine. I mean, maybe on this far side here, because the paint that I paint on top will be darker, so you'll be able to like hide the line. Very thin indication of a far beach just here in the distance. I find acrylic markers can be so handy, especially for these very, very fine lines of the mast. You know, it's hard to do this with a brush, so it can give you a really good base underneath, and then you maybe put a brush over it later just to break it up, but you've got this good fine line to it. And you notice how getting these lines coming in this way and this way just help to frame the moon into the distance, so it kind of guides our eye through the scene. That rigging, I mean, I might paint over it when we're working, but it's just nice to have it in. It's amazing how these dark shapes really help to give us that context of what we're looking at, that feeling of the boats. There's one here from the bottom of this boat that comes out at an angle. It gives us that little bit of an S. These shapes, you see that they're coming around, is kind of zigzagging us. That's the word I'm after. Zigzagging us into the scene. You got this great cast shadow shape of this boat here, and notice again how the mast is being reflected into the water. So you've got these shapes coming down here, and then the mast, kind of hold your breath a bit, is going and goes about again quite lightly, because I'll probably paint in the boats behind it before I put that mast on top. We've also got these little dashes of water on this boat here, and then over on this boat. There's a tiny bit there. Just got to link those two together. Actually, I've just noticed it's amazing how far the reflection goes from this mast here. That is also reflected down here into this water area. Okay, that's great. So now I'm going to block in some of the darkest darks in the scene, just so we can start to get that tonal balance and just really start to establish where all the values work within the value scale. So for this I'm going to be using a couple of round brushes. I've got a smaller round brush here. This is from Rosemary Co. This is a series 344 and this is a size 4. And then I've also got a round from Princeton, an Aspen range. This is also a size 4. So notice how they're both size 4, but they're very different sizes. So you've just got to check when you're looking at sizes of brushes, the actual dimensions on the range, because they're not universal. And what I find handy about this particular round from the Princeton is, you notice here it's got a very, very fine point to it. So that because it's got stiffer bristles, I can push the paint around very easily with it, but then still, you notice how I just kind of twist the brush there to get a fine edge. I can still get a pretty accurate line. So you can notice how I can get quite a fine mark even with using a larger brush. So just to increase the flow, I can use the dipper that we've got just with a touch of water in. And I don't want this to go super thick again. I'm just really washing it in. Notice how there's this glow of light here. We've got the street lamp and the edge of this boat here. This is got a redness to it. So by having the umber, because that's got, you know, part of the orange family, it's got a warmth to it. By having that as a base, will just help to kind of separate our warm and cools. And you can start to see when I paint around this, how having that ground colour as the highlight, that now starts to read here as a highlight. So I'm still really just thinking in terms of drawing. How would I draw this if I was drawing it in black and white? And that's really what I'm looking at. The blocks of tone, the blocks of shapes working together. Not worried about the details, just trying to get those basic blocks in. And there I've gone over a bit, so I can just take a bit of paper towel, fold it in half, just dip the end in some water, and hopefully I can just pull that back a bit just before it dries off. So here, as I'm working through it, I'm looking for what's called its no-tan pattern. So if it was just in white or black, which areas would you paint or draw in? So you can see how I'm just jumping my eye along just as I get these very dark areas. And then the white areas, and then you can kind of start to see the basic shape just in a couple of tones. So on this side, I'm just going to paint in that very first rock with the umber, but you can see how that all of these shades over here are all cool. We've got a cooler blue, right, turquoisey blue right at the end. Then these are all very cool. So I'm going to leave those, and then we can add a bit of blue into that to wash that in as that block in, but I'm just going to keep with the warmth, move over to the boat here, get that painted in. So you're starting to learn about the subject and how its kind of families of warm and cool are grouped together. And again, when you're painting this boat, just try and see it as one whole shape, one whole shadow shape. So now we can start to reinforce some of these areas that I want to go darker with the brown. And also start to add some blue into that mix. So what they'll start to do is darken it. Just having that dark base on the bottom of the boats is really good to ground them into the sand. You'll often find once you've got the burnt umber painted in to start with, when you do the second layer of the darker black, you don't need as much paint to get a nice solid coverage. And then I'm just washing my brush out and then just squeezing it into some paper towel just to get the last remaining bits of pigment out. You can still see here there's some of the burnt umber pigment even when the brush appears to be clean. So that's looking better. I'm just going to wash this in quite lightly just with the pure blue. I'm not worried if this isn't completely the accurate colour. I'm just seeing how my colour relationships are working. So I'm just kind of separating it out into bands. So I've got this band here at the bottom, which has got more of this muted blue shade. Then there's the band here of the sand, which has got more reds into it. And then the band up here of the farland. So tonally, I can definitely start to judge, okay, if I add a bit of the umber to this, so it's more blue than the umber. Give me a more accurate base just to darken this background. Also on this water, again, I'm just thinking tonally, not in terms of colour accuracy. Okay, that's great. So now what I want to do is block in some of the colours into the sky, just so we can get the more intensity there to then start to judge our other colour relationships in balance with that.